The morning sky over New Busan colony turned black as death itself. Massive alien warships blotted out the twin suns, their hulls stretching for kilometers like floating metal cities. The Veltar Empire had arrived, and they brought enough firepower to crack planets. Commander Thekros stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tiny human settlement through enhanced scanners. 50,000 souls scurried below like insects, completely unaware of their fate. His 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied their pathetic defenses, a few orbital platforms and some mining lasers. This would be over before his afternoon meal. Primitive species, he clicked to his second-in-command. No wonder the Council considers them barely sentient. Down on the surface, Colony Director Kim Soo-jin felt the temperature drop as the alien ships blocked out sunlight. She'd been mining asteroids for 15 years, survived solar storms and equipment failures, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Her hands gripped the observation deck railing as the first enemy fighters screamed overhead, their engines shrieking like banshees. The communication console erupted with panicked voices from across the colony. Families crying for their children, workers abandoning their posts, complete chaos spreading like wildfire. But Kim Soo-jin had learned leadership in the harsh void of space. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Attention all residents," her voice boomed through every speaker in New Busan. "This is Director Kim. Enemy vessels have entered our system. All civilians report to underground shelters immediately. Repeat, this is not a drill." The first energy blast struck the main administrative building, turning reinforced steel into molten slag. The shockwave threw Kim Soo-jin against the wall, her ears ringing from the explosion. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as emergency lights bathed everything in red. 3 levels below, mining supervisor Park Min-ho felt the ground shake beneath his boots. He'd been inspecting the deep excavation tunnels when the attack began, surrounded by enough heavy machinery to strip mine an asteroid. His crew of 20 miners looked to him with frightened eyes, waiting for orders. "Boss, what do we do?" asked Lee Young-sik, his best drill operator. "Those ships up there could turn us into space dust." Park Min-ho spat into the tunnel dirt and surveyed the massive boring machines around them. Plasma cutters designed to slice through solid rock, ore processors that could crush diamonds, fusion welders hot enough to melt titanium. The aliens probably thought they were facing helpless farmers, but they'd never seen what humans could do with the right tools. "They think we're defenseless," he growled, running his hand along a massive excavator arm. "They're about to learn that miners don't give up without a fight." Above ground, the Veltar communication array crackled to life across every frequency. The alien voice spoke in perfect Korean, cold and mechanical through translation software. "Humans of this settlement, you are surrounded by the 3rd battle fleet of the Veltar Empire. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels. Surrender within 2 rotations of your planet, and you will be processed as laborers. Resist and face complete annihilation. This is your only warning." The message repeated in dozens of languages as more explosions rocked the colony. Alien fighters swooped between buildings like metallic predators, their energy cannons turning vehicles into scrap metal. They moved with surgical precision, destroying anything that looked remotely military while leaving residential areas untouched. They wanted the humans alive, for now. In the deepest shelter, families huddled together as children cried and adults whispered prayers. But something was different about these humans. 3 generations of deep space mining had bred toughness into their bones. They'd survived equipment failures that should have killed them, worked in conditions that would terrify Earth dwellers, and learned to make miracles from scrap metal and determination. Young Choi Ji-woo, barely 12 years old, crawled through a maintenance shaft, carrying a handheld communicator. He'd been small enough to squeeze through spaces where adults couldn't fit, setting up emergency networks between isolated groups. His sister Nara, only 10, organized other children to carry supplies through forgotten passages their parents had never seen. The Veltar bombardment continued methodically, each strike calculated to demoralize without completely destroying their future workforce. But as the dust settled and smoke cleared, something unexpected began happening in the tunnels below. The humans weren't breaking. They were planning. Park Min-ho gathered his miners around a holographic display showing the tunnel network. Listen. Stop. Those aliens expect us to cry and surrender like scared children. But we're not children, we're miners. We've carved civilization out of dead rock and empty space. Time to show them what humans do when someone threatens our families. The siege of New Busan had begun, but the Veltar Empire had made a fatal error. They'd attacked the wrong species on the wrong day, and they were about to discover why humans had spread across the galaxy, despite being considered primitive by everyone else. Commander Thekros paced his command deck like a caged predator, watching tactical displays that made no sense. His scanners showed the human settlement as completely abandoned. Empty buildings, silent streets, no life signs anywhere. Yet his landing parties kept disappearing into thin air. "Report," he barked at his tactical officer. "Sir, Squad 7. Went dark 3 minutes ago. Same as the others. They simply vanished from our sensors." Deep beneath New Busan's surface, the humans had transformed their mining colony into something the Veltar had never encountered before. Engineer Lee De-un crawled through maintenance tunnels barely wide enough for her shoulders, her tablet glowing with modification blueprints that would have impressed military designers across the galaxy. "Kang Ho-jin, can you reroute power from sectors 12 through 15? She called to her assistant, who was elbow-deep in a massive ore processor's control panel. "Already done," he replied, wiping grease from his forehead. "But are you sure this will work? We're talking about turning a rock crusher into a particle cannon." Lee Da-un grinned as sparks flew from her welding torch. "These machines were built to handle pressures that would flatten most starships. All we're doing is redirecting that energy." She stepped back to admire their work, a device that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard, but packed enough punch to punch holes through alien armor. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Choi Ji-woo squeezed through a ventilation shaft that connected the residential sections to the industrial areas. His small size made him the perfect messenger, and he'd memorized every tunnel, pipe, and service corridor in the colony. Behind him, he dragged a fiber-optic cable jury-rigged from mining communication equipment. "Testing, testing," he whispered into his headset as he reached another shelter. "Sector 4, do you copy?" The response crackled back immediately. "We hear you, Ji-woo. What's the situation topside?" "The metalheads are still patrolling, but they're getting nervous. Uncle Min-ho says to be ready for Phase 2 in 1 hour. His sister Nara had organized the other children into supply teams that could move through spaces too small for adults. They carried food, medical supplies, and component parts between different groups, turning the underground network into a functioning city that the aliens couldn't detect. Above ground, the first Veltar patrol squad landed near the main mining facility, their powered armor clanking against metal walkways. Squad leader Zach Vell scanned the area with thermal sensors, finding nothing but cold machinery and empty corridors. "Sweep and clear," he ordered his 5 warriors. Standard formation. They moved like professionals, weapons ready, covering each other's movements, but they'd never faced an enemy that treated industrial equipment like weapons of war. The explosion came without warning. What looked like ordinary mining charges, the kind used to blast through asteroid rock, had been carefully positioned and modified with proximity triggers. The blast sent 2 Veltar soldiers flying, their armor cracked and smoking. "Contact, contact," Zach Vell screamed into his communicator, but his transmission was cut short as sonic drilling equipment activated around him. The sound waves, designed to pulverize solid stone, made his energy shields fluctuate wildly before collapsing entirely. Park Min-ho watched from a hidden observation post as the alien patrol scattered in confusion. Beside him, former construction foreman Kim Seong-woo operated a massive excavator mech, like it was an extension of his own body. "Remember, these machines weren't built for combat," Min-ho said quietly. "But neither were we, and look how that turned out." The construction mech burst through a false wall panel, its plasma cutting arms slicing through alien armor like it was made of paper. The drilling attachment on its left arm punched through a Veltar soldier's chest plate, while hydraulic claws designed for lifting ore containers grabbed another enemy and hurled him into a concrete wall. Zachvel tried to retreat, but more humans emerged from impossible hiding places. A maintenance worker wielding a welding torch that burned hot enough to cut through starship hull. A cafeteria cook, armed with a modified food processor that fired metallic fragments at supersonic speeds. Even the colony's elderly librarian, Grandmother Park Yun-suk, appeared with a jury-rigged scanner that disrupted Veltar communication equipment. Impossible, Commander Thekros snarled as he watched his tactical display. Another squad icon went red, then disappeared entirely. They're using primitive tools against advanced military equipment. How are they winning? His second-in-command studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Sir, it appears the humans have weaponized their entire industrial infrastructure. Our battle computers don't recognize their attack patterns because they're not using conventional weapons. On the planet's surface, Lee Da-un activated her masterpiece, a ore processing plant converted into a massive magnetic accelerator. The device hummed with enough power to light a small city as it charged up, then launched a stream of metallic projectiles at an orbiting Veltar shuttle. The shuttle's shields held for exactly 3 seconds before the continuous barrage of mining. Debris punched through and sent the craft spiraling toward the ground in flames. Park Min-ho smiled grimly as he watched the enemy retreat. The aliens had expected to fight farmers and found themselves facing an entire civilization that treated engineering problems and military problems as the same basic challenge. They'd learned to survive in the harshest environments in the galaxy by making tools work beyond their intended purpose, and now they were applying that same creativity to war. The Veltar Empire was about to discover that humans didn't just adapt to survive, they adapted to win. Dr. Han Ji-soo hunched over her makeshift laboratory, surrounded by salvaged alien technology and mining equipment that hummed with dangerous energy. She'd been the colony's chief geologist before the invasion, but 3 days of analyzing captured Veltar equipment had turned her into something else entirely, a weapons designer. The frequency match is perfect, she muttered, adjusting her sonic drilling array for the 100th time. The alien shield generator she'd torn from a downed fighter craft sat on her workbench, its crystalline core pulsing with alien energy. Their shields aren't just deflecting our attacks, they're actively resonating with our sonic equipment. Her assistant, mining engineer Oh Dong-hyuk, watched nervously as sparks flew from the jury-rigged device. Are you saying we can actually hurt those ships up there? Better than hurt them, Ji-soo grinned, her eyes gleaming with the same intensity that had made her the best rock analyzer in 3 star systems. We can bring them down. She activated the modified sonic array, and the alien shield generator began vibrating violently. The crystalline structure cracked, then shattered completely as harmonic frequencies tore it apart from the inside. Get me a comlink to every mining team in the colony, she ordered. We're about to turn the tide of this war. Across the underground network, human fighters received their new orders with growing excitement. Park Min-ho coordinated from the central command post, his voice carrying to every tunnel and shelter through young Ji-woo's communication network. Listen up, everyone. We've found their weakness. Every sonic drill, every harmonic cutter, every piece of equipment that makes noise, we're going to use it all at once. When I give the signal, hit those ships with everything we've got. On the surface, the massive mining platforms rose from hidden positions like sleeping giants awakening. These weren't weapons in any traditional sense, they were industrial tools, designed to crack asteroids and pulverize rock formations. But in human hands, they became something far more dangerous. Synchronized targeting in 3, 2, 1, fire. The coordinated sonic pulse erupted from dozens of locations simultaneously, a harmonic wave that made the very air itself vibrate. The sound was beyond human hearing, but its effects were immediately visible as 3 Veltar cruisers began shaking violently in orbit. Commander Thekros felt his flagship shudder as something impossible happened. His shields weren't just failing, they were actively working against him. What is that sound? He screamed as crystal displays cracked throughout the bridge. The first cruiser lost altitude as its shield generators exploded from within. The massive warship, designed to bombard planets from safe distances, suddenly found itself falling toward the surface like a burning meteor. Its hull scraped against New Busan's atmosphere, trailing fire and debris. In the colony's communication center, 17-year-old Yang Tae-min worked his magic on captured alien technology. He'd been hacking mining equipment since he was 12, bypassing safety protocols and optimizing systems that corporate engineers said were impossible to improve. Alien computer systems were just another puzzle to solve. Their encryption is actually pretty basic, he muttered, fingers flying across a keyboard cobbled together from human and alien components. They never expected anyone to break into their networks from the inside. False coordinates flooded Veltar tactical systems as Time-In fed them carefully crafted lies. Phantom human forces appeared on their scanners, non-existent weapon platforms, registered as massive threats, and their own ships began targeting each other in the confusion. "Strike Team Alpha, proceed to coordinate 774, came the panicked voice of a Veltar commander, unknowingly sending his troops directly into a human ambush. But the most unexpected weapon came from the colony's kitchen. Chef Kang So-young had been preparing meals for 50,000 people when the invasion began, and her industrial-sized food processing equipment had caught the attention of the improvised weapons teams. "You want me to make what?" she'd asked. When Lee Da-yun first approached her with the crazy idea, "Chemical weapons," the engineer had replied simply. "From cooking supplies." It sounded insane. But So-young had spent 20 years working with food preservatives, cleaning agents, and industrial-grade flavor enhancers. When she concentrated and combined them in her massive mixing vats, the results were devastating too. "Alien armor composites. The metal they use reacts with sodium compounds," she explained to a group of volunteer fighters, handing out spray bottles filled with what looked like kitchen cleaner. "Hit their armor with this, and it starts breaking, down at the molecular level." Soon, human fighters emerged from tunnels, carrying the most unlikely arsenal in galactic history. Spray bottles filled with concentrated food preservatives, modified kitchen equipment that fired streams of corrosive cleaning agents, even water. Balloons loaded with acidic compounds that ate through alien technology like it was made of sugar. The second Veltar cruiser crashed into New Busan's northern mining district, its hull split open like a broken egg. Alien survivors stumbled from the wreckage, only to find themselves facing humans, armed with household products that dissolved their advanced armor on contact. Commander Thekros watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos as false readings multiplied and his own ships began firing on each other. His pride had turned to confusion, then confusion to fear, and now fear was becoming something he'd never experienced before: terror. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 different patrol units," his communications officer reported, voice shaking. "They're being attacked by creatures using kitchen equipment and mining tools." The third cruiser fell toward the planet's surface as its shield generators collapsed under harmonic assault. But this time the humans were ready. They'd learned from the first 2 crashes, and teams of fighters armed with improvised chemical weapons waited to capture whatever survived. The siege of New Busan had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a complete reversal where the primitives were systematically defeating the advanced civilization through sheer creativity and determination. And the humans were just getting started. Captain Oh Hee-jin was hauling industrial components through the Kepler sector when New Busan's desperate distress signal reached her ship. The Iron Tiger shuddered as she pushed the old cargo haulers, engines beyond safe limits, racing toward coordinates that might already be a graveyard. "Captain, we're picking up multiple Veltar signatures," her navigator Yongmin Seo called from his console. "That's a full battle fleet. We should turn around." Hei-jin studied the tactical display showing dozens of alien warships surrounding the colony world. Her cargo hauler wasn't built for combat, just a converted mining vessel with salvaged laser arrays bolted to the hull. But 20 years of dodging pirates and corporate enforcers had taught her that survival wasn't about having the best weapons. "Signal all human vessels in the sector," she ordered, her fingers dancing across jury-rigged controls. "Tell them New Busan needs help, and tell them Captain Oh Hee-jin isn't backing down from a fight." The response surprised even her. Within hours, a bizarre collection of human ships began converging on the system. Captain Shin Woo-bin arrived first in his modified exploration vessel, Star Dancer, followed by the luxury yacht Golden Phoenix that someone had turned into a missile platform. Behind them came cargo haulers, research ships, even a mobile refinery that bristled with improvised weapons. "This is insane," Shin laughed over the comm channel as more ships dropped out of hyperspace. "We're about to take on a military fleet, with garbage haulers and pleasure craft," but Hyejin had seen something in the tactical data that made her grin. The Veltar ships moved in perfect formations, following textbook battle strategies that any military academy student could predict. They expected to fight other military forces using conventional tactics. "Listen up, all vessels," she broadcast on the human frequency. "These aliens fight like they're in a classroom exercise. Time to show them what real space combat looks like." The human fleet spread out in a pattern that would have horrified any military strategist. Ships moved independently, following no formation or apparent strategy. The luxury yacht Golden Phoenix dove straight at a Veltar destroyer while spinning like a corkscrew. The mining vessel Rockbreaker began launching its ore containers as kinetic projectiles. On New Busan's surface, Lee Da-Yun watched the space battle unfold through her improvised targeting systems. Her modified mining platforms had become orbital support weapons, launching streams of processed ore and metal debris with pinpoint accuracy. "Targeting data incoming," she reported to the human fleet. "Veltar cruiser at bearing 27 Mark V has shield fluctuations on its port side." Captain Shin Woo-bin's Star Dancer immediately changed course, performing a spiral dive that made his crew grip their seats in terror. The exploration ship had been designed to study asteroids, not dogfight with alien warships, but Shin treated space combat like a three-dimensional puzzle game. "They can't predict what we'll do because we don't know what we'll do ourselves," he laughed, as his ship slipped between two Veltar fighters, their targeting computers unable to calculate his seemingly random flight path. The converted luxury yacht Golden Phoenix proved that human creativity knew no bounds. Its owner, wealthy businessman Park Cheol-min, had installed missile launchers in what used to be guest suites and turned the dining hall into a weapons control center. "Fire the champagne torpedoes," he ordered with theatrical flair, launching. Modified mining charges that had been painted gold and loaded with explosive ore samples. Commander Thekros watched his tactical display with growing horror as human ships moved in patterns that defied all military logic. His battle computers kept predicting their movements, then being completely wrong as the humans did something unexpected. "Sir, the cargo vessel is launching its entire cargo hold at us," his tactical officer reported in disbelief. "That's impossible. Why would they weaponize their cargo?" But Captain Hyejin's Iron Tiger had done exactly that, ejecting massive containers filled with industrial components that scattered like a metal asteroid field. The Veltar cruiser, trying to intercept her, flew directly into the debris cloud, its hull peppered with thousands of small impacts that overwhelmed its shields. From the planet's surface, the human defenders provided crucial support for their improvised fleet. Young Yang Tai-min had hacked into the Veltar communication network, feeding false orders that sent their ships into vulnerable positions. "Enemy destroyer moving to intercept the research vessel," Lee Da-un reported, tracking multiple targets simultaneously. "Launching kinetic barrage in 3, 2, 1. The mining platform fired a stream of metal ore that struck the Veltar destroyer's engines, sending it tumbling out of control. Captain Shin Woo-bin's ship immediately swooped in, its modified scientific equipment somehow jury-rigged into cutting beams that sliced through alien armor. The battle became a chaotic dance of human unpredictability versus alien military precision. Every time the Veltar tried to establish battle lines, human ships would scatter in random directions, then regroup for attacks that came from impossible angles. The mobile refinery, Oremaster, used its massive processing arms to literally grab a Veltar fighter and crush it like a tin can. The research vessel Deep Explorer launched scientific probes that had been converted into guided missiles. Even the smallest cargo haulers contributed by ramming damaged alien ships or creating debris fields that disrupted enemy formations. "This is not how space combat works," Commander Thekros muttered, as he watched a human yacht perform a loop-de-loop around his flagship while firing missiles from what appeared to be modified party cannons. But the humans weren't fighting according to military doctrine. They were fighting according to human nature, turning everything into a weapon and treating impossible odds as just another engineering challenge to solve. The tide of battle had turned completely, and the Veltar Empire was learning why humans had spread across the galaxy, despite being underestimated by every other species they encountered. Commander Thekros stood on his burning bridge, watching his once mighty fleet being torn apart by creatures he'd considered barely intelligent. Half his ships were disabled, his ground forces were being defeated by kitchen equipment, and his military reputation lay in ruins. But the Veltar Empire had one final card to play. "Sir, we could still retreat," his tactical officer suggested, nursing burns from an exploded console. "Regroup with the Second Fleet and—" "No," Thekros snarled, his 6 eyes blazing with fury. "I will not return to the Empire as the commander who lost to primitives wielding cooking utensils. Activate the planet crackers." The remaining Veltar ships began charging their most devastating weapons, orbital bombardment arrays designed to turn entire worlds into molten slag. If he couldn't have this victory, Thekros would ensure no one remembered his defeat. Deep beneath New Busan's surface, Colony Director Kim Soo-jin watched the energy reading spike on her scanner display. She'd expected this moment from the beginning. Aliens who couldn't win honorably often chose to destroy everything rather than admit defeat. "Lim Dong-wook, are you ready?" she called into her communicator. 3 kilometers deeper in the planets, Corps Chief Engineer Lim Dong-wook made final adjustments to the most ambitious project in human history. What had started as a desperate plan to save their colony had become something magnificent, a weapon built from pure human determination and mining technology pushed far beyond its intended limits. "The core taps are synchronized," he reported, sweat dripping from his forehead as he worked among massive machines that hummed with enough power to light entire star systems. Every fusion reactor, every geothermal plant, every solar collector on the planet is feeding into the array. The humans had done something impossible. They'd turned their entire world into a weapon. Mining equipment designed to extract energy from planetary cores now channeled that power into a single devastating pulse that would make their sonic attacks look like gentle whispers. "Planetary bombardment detected," reported Dr. Han Ji-soo from her sensor station. "Multiple Veltar ships charging their main weapons. We have maybe 2 minutes before they turn us into cosmic dust." Kim Soo-jin felt the weight of 50,000 lives on her shoulders. Every man, woman, and child in New Busan was counting on a plan so crazy that it might actually work. "All hands brace for electromagnetic pulse," she announced throughout the colony. "And may whatever gods are watching have mercy on us all." Lim Dong-wook's finger hovered over the activation switch. Around him, machines that had spent decades boring through asteroid rock and extracting precious metals now served a single purpose: channeling the raw power of an entire planet into space. "For New Busan," he whispered and pressed the button. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the planet's surface like an invisible tidal wave, racing outward at the speed of light. It passed through the human ships without effect. Their equipment had been specially shielded, using techniques learned from solar storm survival. But the Veltar fleet had no such protection. Every alien ship in orbit suddenly went dark. Advanced. Computers crashed, weapon systems died, life support failed, and mighty engines that could push vessels between stars simply stopped working. The technological superiority that had made the Veltar Empire feared across the galaxy became their greatest weakness in a single, devastating moment. Commander Thekros watched his flagship systems fail one by one, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across his command bridge. Outside, dozens of Veltar ships began falling toward New Busan's surface like metallic meteors, their crews trapped inside vessels that had become flying coffins. "Impossible," he breathed as his ship entered the planet's atmosphere, hull plates glowing red from atmospheric friction. How did primitives build something capable of this? His answer came as the flagship crashed into New Busan's northern mining district with tremendous force, creating a crater where a processing plant used to stand. Thekros crawled from the wreckage, his advanced armor cracked and sparking. to find himself surrounded by humans armed with the most unlikely weapons he'd ever seen. Park Min-ho approached the alien commander, carrying a modified plasma cutter in one hand and a spray bottle of concentrated food preservatives in the other. Behind him came the entire population of New Busan, miners, engineers, children, grandparents, all united in defense of their home. "Need a hand?" Min-ho asked with grim humor, offering to help the alien leader to his feet. "Looks like your fancy technology isn't working so well anymore." Faz Thekros accepted help from the very primitive he'd tried to destroy. Understanding finally dawned in his alien mind. The humans hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They'd won through something his empire had forgotten long ago. They'd won through creativity, determination, and the absolute refusal to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Across the galaxy, news of the Battle of New Busan spread through trade routes and diplomatic channels like wildfire. Other species who had dismissed humans as harmless miners and farmers suddenly began reconsidering their assumptions. The Veltar Empire, once considered invincible, had been defeated by creatures who turned household products into weapons of war. On distant worlds, alien military leaders studied reports of the battle with growing concern. How do you fight an enemy that weaponizes everything? How do you predict tactics from a species that treats space combat like a puzzle game and considers impossible odds just another engineering challenge? The humans of New Busan had done more than save their colony. They'd proven that in a universe full of advanced civilizations, sometimes the most dangerous species is the one that refuses to accept limitations. As Commander Thekros was led away to medical treatment by the same humans he'd tried to annihilate, he couldn't help but admire their ingenuity. They'd turned mining equipment into weapons, kitchen supplies into chemical warfare, and their entire planet into a defensive system that could disable a battle fleet. The siege was over, but its implications would reshape galactic politics for generations. The humans had earned their place among the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but through the simple refusal to surrender when faced with impossible odds. The end.